Welcome to the Daily Fool. We gotta. Is this the name? If you have suggestions for what we should name this, as Jason and I talk every day about what's going on in the market, we are open to suggestions. But the Daily Fool is the working title for today. Today we got a lot that we're gonna try to cover, and get your questions in here on YouTube if you have them. We're gonna give you a quick update on the market, Intuitive Surgical's earnings. We'll maybe touch a little bit on Intel, the future of robotics, Tesla. There's a lot of things to cover there. Jason, I'm going to pull up the market here, but what's on your mind this morning?
Well, I mean, the thing that stood out to me, honestly, was just the Intel news, right? We're just jumping into earnings season, and Intel, it's sort of a tale of two reports, right? You had the quarter itself, which wasn't really a bad quarter, but then you had the guidance going forward, which was underwhelming. And I think there are a lot of question marks out there in regard to just exactly where this company is in the AI race. And
are they in the AI race? Is maybe the question.
Well, yes, they are, but not to the extent that maybe the market would hope, right? And I think if you remember, you go back to sort of the early 2020s, when Pat Gelsinger came in there and really sort of defined that new foundry strategy. I think there was a lot of excitement, and rightly so. But we've seen, year after year after year, that foundry business continues to, the targets kind of, they start moving a little bit further away. And I mean, this quarter they talked about supply issues. They weren't able to meet demand for their consumers because of supply. Now, that was partly because of just the excess demand in the AI space altogether, but also, Intel is having some yield issues, right? They're just not the most efficient operator in this space. And
yeah, the hilarious question came from one of the analysts that I think ended with, like, do you know what you're doing? Because there's like $11 billion in inventory, and it just seems like, what are you doing here? You're making chips. You shouldn't have this much inventory.
It feels like, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would ever be quite that bold, because I feel like they know a lot more about this business than I do. But yeah, it does kind of feel like this compared to everyone else. I mean, are you guys really ready for this? Do you know what you're doing? Because again, I mean, they seem to be moving those goalposts further back. And, you look at just a quote from CEO Lip Bhutan, who said, "We're on a multi-year journey. It will take time and resolve." So, that immediately translates into, hey, guys, it's going to take a little while. We need you to be patient. And Travis, I don't know about you, but I don't think Wall Street is really known for its patience. So that probably is what's going on right now. And now I think it's fair to also say, if you look at the last year for Intel, it has had a terrific 12 months. I mean, the stock is up better than 100%. But I think a lot of that was this excitement about the AI opportunity in the foundry business. And now we're starting to see that maybe it's going to take a little bit longer than many expected.
What is crazy as I look at Intel here, the market cap, even after the stock is down 16% today, the market cap is still $217 billion.
It's a huge company.
A huge company from a valuation perspective. You look at their operations, and they're not going great, but the market it isn't like the market is pricing this as if it's going to zero. It is still a very, very highly valued company. TSMC is, I think, worth $1.5 trillion. So very different market cap there. But I'm always surprised to see how big that number is.
It is big, and I tell you, they have a balance sheet that at least has them in position where they can continue operating. But yeah, I think it's just going to be a matter of, are they really going to be able to capitalize on this AI opportunity? I was thinking, sort of tongue in cheek a little bit, but I mean, I wonder if it's almost not even worth them. Hey, let's just kind of forego the AI opportunity. Let's skip right over to quantum computing, because that's kind of what's next down the pike, right? Is like, maybe AI isn't really where they're gonna win it, but maybe if they kind of got started on that quantum computing side of things, which they are on now. But I mean, that quantum computing opportunity is going to be coming here in the next 5 to 10 years. And what we're seeing from a lot of industry research there, it's not that quantum computing is going to replace classical computing or AI. It's the fact that all three are going to work together as we require more and more powerful computing as technology evolves. So I suspect they will see better days. But yeah, this was a disappointing outlook, and I understand the reaction.
Every time I hear quantum computing, I realize how unintelligent I am, because I have no idea what is going on in that space, what we're going to be using it for. So I'm happy to play the ignorant investor when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I'll tell
Let's
you,
move
we
to
have our quantum service, and I'm on that here at the Fool, and it has been intimidating, yet also a lot of fun learning about that space. It is very, very in depth and interesting, and it's just, you know, bottom line is that as technology evolves, we're going to need much more powerful computing methods, and that's really what quantum is all about. But it is also, it operates in such a difficult environment. It's just it's a neat space to follow, though.
Let's go to Intuitive Surgical. They reported earnings, I believe it was last night after the market closed.
Yeah.
What did you see from the report? This is the quarterly numbers, just to kind of give some historical context. They've got revenue, net income, and the change in revenue there.
Yeah. I think Intuitive Surgical, I think when it comes to robotics, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but you know, the industrial applications to me make the most sense. And you look at spaces like healthcare, I think it makes a lot of sense there. I mean, obviously we see, you know, Amazon making waves with their warehouse operations, but Intuitive Surgical to me, I mean, they're the top dog in the healthcare space in regard to robotics, thanks to the Da Vinci system, which is really been the success of this company for so long. It's not to say it's without competition. I mean, to be sure, they noted in the call that there is competition heating up, particularly in China, as providers there lean more towards local suppliers. But it's also worth remembering that 67% of Intuitive's business comes from the US, and China represents just 6% of the overall procedure volume. So it's not hinging on that China story. But the numbers were very encouraging. I mean, worldwide procedures with Da Vinci and the Ion system combined, they were up 18%. Da Vinci procedures grew 17%. Ion grew 44%. And for those who aren't familiar, Ion is the company's bronchoscopy solution, right? It's something that got FDA clearance in 2019 and has really just grown by leaps and bounds and has been a nice sort of addition to the success of the Da Vinci system. And they're on Da Vinci 5 now, which is really starting to amp up computing power, incorporate a lot of those AI features. They placed 532 more Da Vinci systems, placed 42 more Ion systems. They grew the Da Vinci surgical system, that installed base, up to over 11,100 systems. And the Ion systems, we saw, what is that? Let me see here. They added 42 in the quarter compared with adding 69 a year ago, but they grew that installed base to 995 now. And so that's been really encouraging to see as well. Revenue up 19%. You think about how big this company is, they're growing that top line still at 19%. That's impressive. And they're looking for a good outlook in 2026, right? They expect to see procedure growth in the 13 to 15% range. You know, it's one that I was able to recommend in the immersive technology service here back in 2019, and it's up better than 210% since then. It's outperforming nicely. But I mean, you look all the way back to, I think it was 2003 when Intuitive first got a recommendation in Rule Breakers, thanks to David Gardner. That thing has just lit the world on fire. So,
yeah. I wanted to ask you about valuation. So the quarter, $2.9 billion worth of net income, worth of revenue, growing in the teens. So 19% revenue growth. That's nothing to sneeze at. But then you look at the valuation, PE multiple is 69. Enterprise value to sales is almost 20. I know that, again, one of the things that David Gardner always talks about is actually when companies are really highly valued, that's a good sign. And oftentimes investors sort of under anticipate how much those companies can grow over the long period of time. Intuitive Surgical, I've never owned it, in part because partly I don't understand the business well enough to just buy that individual stock. But secondly, every time I look at it, it's very expensive. That has worked out well, though. So, but how do you think about that balance?
Well, I think, you know, it is absolutely fair to say that this is a company that looks overvalued. I mean, by traditional metrics, it does, right? It kind of reminds me a little bit of Axon Enterprise. And, you know, it's this razor and blade model, right? Where they're getting those razors out there, those installed bases, right? The Da Vincis and the Ions, and then they sell the consumables to keep those machines running. And they get such just warm reception from the physicians in the hospitals that are using them. It's clear that they're doing something right. And so they they take the feedback from physicians and they really use that to make their systems even better. So I think the market is excited about the fact that it really is the top dog in the space, right? It's the leader. There really isn't a company out there that is touching what they're doing. It's got that installed base, so it's very difficult to disrupt. And then you see the ongoing sales of those consumables that need to be used for the surgical procedures. And then you add to that the innovative nature of the company, right? Coming up with Ion. I mean, that was something that was a big question mark early on. I think is like, what comes after Da Vinci? Well, now you've got Ion, and that's the leader in that bronchoscopy space. And then who's to say they don't come up with something else down the line too? So I would love to get this thing on a dip, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I would expect that anytime soon.
What do you think this tells us about the future of robotics? Robotics is obviously a topic of conversation everywhere in the market, everything from NVIDIA to Tesla. Obviously, this is arguably one of the best robotics companies in the world. Obviously, a company like iRobot, which had robot in its name, didn't really work out. But what are you looking for maybe the next Intuitive Surgical from 2023, like you mentioned, that has the potential to be a 10 bagger, a 100 bagger, something like that in that robotics space?
Yeah, for me, I feel like the applications for robotics, and I mean, maybe this is short-sighted. I see more use cases in the industrial side of things versus the personal side of things. Like I know, Elon Musk has said the world one day there will be more humanoid robots than people and whatever. I don't know. Maybe I have a hard time seeing that. I don't know. If you gave me one of those robots, I would just give it right back to. I don't want one of those.
Here's my question. So let's say one of these things costs 20 grand.
Yeah.
What would you need it to do in your house for it to be worth spending 20 grand?
That's the thing is I have yet to come up with anything that I really feel like would actually justify not just the cost, but I don't know. There's sort of a creep factor. I just don't exactly. I just don't trust it. Like Chris Hill would always talk about the rise of the machines. And I mean, this is starting to come to fruition here. So I see more applications on the industrial side. One company that I've started looking more and more into just because I think it's an interesting one. It's called Serve Robotics. Have you heard of these guys? Yeah, like
they've got the little things that drive around and deliver food, right?
Exactly. And I mean, like we see those all over the place here in Fairfax, Virginia. And I know that NVIDIA had a big investment with them as well. I don't believe they do anymore, but I know they at least did. So that's what I'm looking a little bit more closely into because I think, hey, everybody's got to eat and people love convenience. We've seen with Uber Eats and DoorDash and all of that. Like, I mean, those businesses continue to do well because people just love that convenience. And so if these little Serve robots, can gain widespread adoption, I think this company could go places.
I'm going to give you the killer apps that they've got to figure out.
Yeah.
That will become a massive market. If they can do the laundry, fold clothes.
Yeah.
If they can pick up after my kids. Okay. So we got three small kids. Never fail. I mean, we could clean the house for hours and my 1-year-old comes in and the place is a disaster in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But if we just came down and the robot spent the evening picking up after the kids, I think everybody would be a little bit happier in the house. So there's, and there's little things like it'd be great if they could mow the lawn. That's not worth that much money to me. I kind of like going out and mowing the lawn. I like shoveling a little bit, stuff like that. But again, something like $20,000, that's a lot of money to be spending to do things like normal household chores. So I sometimes I do have a hard time wrapping my head around that. On the industrial side, that's what you mentioned. I think I am naturally very skeptical of that because I worked in manufacturing for a few years, and I've told this story before, probably on Motley Fool Money, but I mean, I started with 3M's largest plant in Hutchinson, Minnesota, where they make all the blue tape at that time was all made there.
Oh, really?
Want to know kind of what they're making there. But a ton of different products are made there. And this is 22 years ago. I started there. They had robots driving around and delivering pallets in a fully automated warehouse that was the size of a football field and 6 stories high and no people in it. That stuff was old 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So
it's not like it's new.
So the thing that I struggle with so many of these robotics things is I get how it can take a piece of metal from one place to another that obviously a machine or an old robot, a traditional robot could do, but you haven't put it in there typically because just the ROI isn't there. Maybe the thing changes on a regular basis. Maybe it's the location of the equipment, whatever it may be. Like that could be automated, but the ROI on that didn't make sense. So you just have a person there. So I get where there could be small areas where that would make sense. But so many of these factories, every factory that I've been in is very, very highly automated. And the people that are working there are not doing things that a robot could do. They're fixing the robots that are already there.
You're
So
babysitting the
there's
robots.
yeah, I mean, so something gets jammed and you've got to you've got to take something out or or a sensor gets moved wrong. And that's where I sort of struggle with um the easy tie to this is definitely going to be something for industrial applications because I just go to I'm trying to think of what jobs would be replaced by a robot in the factory that I worked in, and I don't know what it would be. You maybe have a handful of them, but you
Yeah.
certainly weren't going to replace 1,000 people that were doing, 100,000 complex tasks. So I don't know. That's my skeptical hat. But again, I would be happy to buy some of these stocks in the trough of disillusionment where
Yeah.
the valuations come down and not at the top of the hype cycle.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's not going to replace all the jobs, right? Technology isn't going to replace all the jobs, but it will likely take a few. But I think at the end of the day, people are still pretty good at stuff. Human beings are still pretty good at doing some things, we shouldn't forget that.
All right, let's last thing that I wanted to touch on. If you have questions, put them in YouTube, and we'd be happy to cover anything that's on your mind. Next week, we really start to have earnings season kick into high gear, so we will
Oh
have
yeah,
probably a lot more takes on what's going on with earnings. Probably some big stock moves as well, and some pretty identifiable companies. Some of the big tech companies are reporting next week. But one of the big things, and I talked about this a little bit on Motley Fool Money today. We just recorded that, so for everybody, that will be out later today in all the places that you get podcasts. But Tesla has actually taken the safety driver out of at least a few vehicles in Austin, Texas. And Elon Musk has said that's going to expand nationwide, I believe, by the end of the year. I don't know how you translate by the end of the year in Elon Musk speak, but they are at least moving in that direction. I have been questioning what's going on with robotaxi for quite a while. Where do you think we're at with this? Because Tesla is not the only company out there. You also have Waymo. They're doing somewhere around, I think, 450,000 rides a week is the latest number that we have. I
yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if that's over 500,000. By this point, they're talking about expanding. I think they're commercially operating in 6 cities today. Could be 20 cities by the end of the year. You also have Zoox, which is that vehicle. It's like a miniature bus, and the doors open like that. I think that's a really cool looking vehicle.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that's owned by Amazon. They can do whatever they want with their balance sheet and expand
Mhm.
that as quickly as they want. But I don't know exactly what their strategy is going to be long term. But how do you think about Tesla's move in this specifically and how it relates to some of these other companies? Because it seems to me that there isn't really a first mover advantage anymore. And unless there is some sort of switch that they can throw and make, 2 million vehicles fully autonomous, tomorrow or in relatively short order, we're going to have supply from Waymo and, Volkswagen's Moya, which is using mobilized technology. They're supposedly going to be pulling the safety driver by the end of this year. Obviously you have Zoox, you have Baidu. There's tons of companies in this space and it's getting pretty crowded.
It is, and I mean, let's not forget, Musk. He was talking about this being widespread in 2020, right? I mean,
Right.
he obviously has a reputation for over promising on the timeline side of things, right? I mean, like let's not take away from the amazing stuff that he does. Very very creative and smart guy, but when I saw this and he said that they will be widespread by the end of the year in the US. And I thought that, it reminded me of that old Bill Clinton thing. It depends on what your definition of is. And it's kind of like, maybe it just depends on what your definition of widespread is, right? I mean, maybe his widespread is different than what you or I might think. There's a lot of red tape that comes with implementing this strategy. And you're right. You look at companies like Waymo out there and others. I mean, Tesla's actually kind of a laggard in the space in the self-driving market, but
in the fully autonomous market, to just be clear,
right,
the
right,
stuff
right,
you
yeah,
can buy with a vehicle, they're clearly a leader, but you are still responsible for everything that happens in your vehicle. The no driver in the seat, yes, I think it's pretty clear they're behind at least a couple of other companies.
exactly. And I mean, I think we get there eventually. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I don't think, at least in my lifetime, I do not believe that we'll just have a roads full of just self-driving car. Like, I actually like to be able to drive myself. I mean, it's like one of those things. I mean, I like living life to the extent that if I need to go mow the lawn, okay, well, I'm capable. I can do that. I can drive my car. I like the freedom. I think for a lot of people, having a car, they equate that with freedom. But it depending on where you live. I mean,
You're
these
talking
are
like a Midwesterner here, Jason. I know you don't live in the Midwest, but you're talking like a Midwesterner.
well, I mean, hey, it's I think that I think it's going to be local. It's going to be kind of like real estate, right? It's just going to depend on the locality. And I think for certain metropolitan areas, these are great solutions. They will make sense. I'm not sure the technology is fully there, where people feel like they trust it. So I think that takes time. That's sort of like almost a generation needs to be raised on this technology to believe in it and trust it. Whereas, like, you got people my age who probably look at that and say, I would never, right? Now, I would not say I would never, but I think a lot of people probably feel that way still until we see really, some solid evidence this works and it's safe and people can trust it. I think the trust factor is what really comes down to. And I think that just takes time. And I think it's a lot easier for people when they're kids who are raised on technology to then accept that technology, as opposed to people who are older who need to then figure out a way to embrace the new technology. And so that might be one of the hurdles there.
I want to push on a couple of things that you said, because I tend to actually take the opposite view. I think this is going to be much more widespread than you think. But I don't necessarily think the winners are all the companies that the market thinks. I mean, Tesla has a $1.4 trillion valuation, based largely on the fact that investors think that they're going to win a market like this. And the example that I always go back to is Uber. So Uber was founded in 2009. That was only 17 years ago. The idea of getting in a random person's car, the idea of even knowing where your taxi was. I mean, I was a pretty early adopter of Uber. I lived in downtown Minneapolis at the time. And, when we would call a taxi, you had no idea when it was going to show up. Is it going to show up in 5 minutes? Is it going to show up in 30 minutes? And so the real value of Uber back in those days, and that was when it was just black cars, was I could see where the vehicle was and I could see how long it was going to take to get to us. And I could say, hey, everybody, we got to go. And that was revolutionary at that time. Now we're at the point where it's not just black cars. It's not just SUVs. It's just regular people driving their cars around. And this is some of the metrics for Uber: 189 million monthly active users on the platform and 12.9 billion rides. I did the math on this actually last night. That's about 1% of all rides in the US are on just Uber. Not even the other platforms. So I think that this is going to be normalized much, much faster than a lot of people think. And I think, I have not been to San Francisco in a while, but I think, people who live there just getting in a Waymo is kind of a normal thing to do.
Yeah.
The other thing that I always think about with some of these new technologies is, so my kids are 1, 5, and 8. What's going to be different when they turn 18 at those 3 ages? So my son, 10 years from now, is he going to want to learn how to drive when he turns 16? Probably. We're probably not at the point where he's not going to be completely uninterested in driving. My 1-year-old, now we're 15 years away from driving. That's very possible that, that autonomous vehicles are so widespread that he just doesn't have any need to learn how to drive. Maybe we own one vehicle then, instead of we got 2 right now. I know with 5 in the family, like traditionally you would have 4 or 5 cars, maybe a couple of beaters in the front yard. But I think that some of this stuff is going to happen a lot faster than people think. And one of the things that I keep pondering, and investors watching this should think about, is what does that future look like? Is there just one company that's going to win this? If that's true and it's Tesla, then they'll be extremely valuable. But I mentioned 5 or 6 companies that are very far along in their testing. Tesla's not the only company testing this stuff. It's
Oh,
not
no,
just
no,
Waymo, it's
no.
not just Zoox. There is, Uber has a slide that shows all the partners that they're either working with or could potentially work with. They want to commoditize that supply, and that's where I think is really interesting. Is if that's where we go, that autonomous vehicle technology becomes a little bit like PC manufacturers, and where is the value on that supply side? Because it isn't like a PC was in the 80s or 90s, right? You had the Intel chip in the Microsoft operating system, so the users had to know how to use the operating system. That was where Microsoft got its power. Intel, the chips kept getting better and better. They were exponentially better over some of their competitors, and you had to keep getting the next one. Autonomy is going to be very different, because once you reach a level of safety, like if there's no crashes, there's no level of safety beyond no crashes.
Right.
So if 5 companies get to the point where there's no accidents, who has an advantage? And
I mean, you're saying it just becomes commoditized. So
yeah,
I mean,
I'm saying that it becomes commoditized. So I'm just, if you're interested in this space, and I think it's fascinating to watch because there's so much going on, but keep an eye on all the players, not just 1 or 2, because you've got to know everything that's going on, because there's so many players in the background that aren't rah, but they're doing stuff. They're on the road. You may not even know that they're there. I live in the Minneapolis area. We have May Mobility vehicles doing testing here, and I only know that because I saw some. So it's, I think this stuff is coming really quickly, but who the winners are is not necessarily. This is one of the things I learned in following the solar industry. Your thesis can be right that this is the future. I was 100% right that the solar energy was going to explode. I was very wrong about who the winners were going to be. So sometimes, picking a basket and saying, hey, these are the 4, 5, 6 leaders, and here's who I think are going to win, can often be the right strategy, but an area worth watching. Tesla gets a lot of the attention, but
think about when the internet, came onto the scene, right? I mean, fast forward to today. Well, I mean, Netscape isn't the company dominating the space, right? Yahoo isn't the company dominating the space. So like, being first doesn't mean, you necessarily end up winning. And I mean, I think it's an interesting question there in regard to your kids, because I just went through this. We have a 21-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old daughter. And, they were excited to learn how to drive. And here in Virginia, it was 16, I think. So, we went through that and teaching them how to drive. And I will be honest, man. I mean, every day I worry. I do, right? It's not because of them. It's because I know how people drive up here in Northern Virginia, and some of them just drive crazy. And I just, that makes me worry. But they also love to be able to drive. They love that freedom. And so for them, I don't know if it's something where they'll ever be interested in relinquishing that ability to drive and just letting the robots do it. But again, we kind of go to that generational thing. I mean, when you talk about your 1-year-old, I mean, what the world looks like in 15 years, 16 years, it could look markedly different. I mean, I would be willing to bet we will see absolutely many, many, many more automated vehicles on the road by then. And that changes the calculus completely.
Well, definitely a lot to watch. Before we go, we want to give everybody a little preview of some of the stuff that's coming up from the Motley Fool Money. Like I said, I just recorded the Friday show. So that will be out later today, where you get podcasts. That comes out every single day. So definitely give that a listen if you want to hear more of me on Wednesdays and Fridays. And sometimes I drag Jason in to join as well. On the premium side, Hidden Gems, Firecrackers, and Digital Explorers have got some picks coming out February 3rd and February 5th. Stock Advisor. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to talk about there, but those are the kind of some of the key dates that are coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was just going to talk a little bit about what's coming down the pike here for earnings. Next week is going to be a big week starting out. You got UPS on Tuesday. You look at Wednesday, you got Starbucks in the morning. In the afternoon, you got Microsoft, you got Meta, you got IBM, you got Waste Management, Lending Club. Go to Thursday morning, MasterCard. Geez, Thursday afternoon, you got Apple, Visa. Yeah, just going to be a week full of coverage. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hopefully it's nice enough out here that I can go take the dog for a long walk and listen to some of these conference calls. That's usually when I get my conference call listening done. But 20 below right now. It's not happening. Our plan is to be here every market day in the morning. Monday, the plan is for 11 o'clock Eastern time. But that could vary by day. So just check us out, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and you will find out when we're going live. Thanks for joining me, Jason. And like I said, anytime you guys have questions, put them in the show notes and join us here on Monday. We will see you then.
Thanks, Travis.